I can adjust your headphone volume if you need to. So just,
I'm good.
Okay, fantastic. All right, man. Well, Cody, welcome to the podcast.
I appreciate it.
Yes. Cody Davis, I'll let you tell your story here and there. We've just been chatting it up. I always make the joke that's like, we should have just been. Sometimes the guests, I almost asked you today if you wanted to get some lunch, but we'll go get lunch and stuff, and we talk about tons of cool stuff. Mm-hmm. It's like, oh man, we should have recorded all that.
The pre-podcast.
Yeah. So, but appreciate you taking the time out of your day. I know that McLeod is going to be upset that he was not invited to our jam sesh. We jammed some music right before this. That was a lot of fun. So, we're kind of chatting about music, man. How old were you when you got into playing?
Let me think, man. So I wanted to play at a very early age. I found a guitar in my mother's closet. It had 2 strings on it. It was just an old
Everybody's
beater.
got kind of family guitar like that.
And so my mom didn't even realize she still had it. So I'm like, I'm going to learn how to play guitar. So, man, I just played on these 2 strings, didn't know how to tune, we didn't have internet or anything to learn. But I came home one day and my dad was having a garage sale and a dude was walking off with the guitar.
Oh, no.
And I was like, well, I was going to learn to play that. And he was like, no, you weren't. I got $25 for it. So a few years later, I was probably 9 or 10 around the time. I'd probably say I started playing around 14 or 15. I bought a guitar, with my own money, started trying to learn to play it. I was really big into MTV at the time, still played music,
Man, those are the days
and stuff. And they are, at least the shows that weren't music videos were music related about bands and things. So I was really influenced by a lot of that. So yeah, I started playing with that and started playing in the church. The guy that was kind of like the youth leader would teach you for free. So started going down there. And then, like I told you before when we were playing.
That's exactly how I got involved.
Yeah, guitar just didn't really, I wanted to be a lead guitar player and it just didn't really work for me. But bass really kind of connected with me. So I started playing bass.
I always joke bass for me, and I run into a lot of folks. It was like the sort of the gateway drug of music of it. And then now, I most recently got that mandolin I had hanging in there. And that is actually one of the easier. Now, I'm not real good at some of the finer points. Like, I'm proficient at finger picking on the guitar.
Sure.
But on the mandolin, or just picking in general, like
right.
Just like the little fine tuning. But a lot of the chords are like 2 of the strings, which are doubled. They're like a 12-string sword.
Right.
And then the other 2 strings would be open. So it's like all the chords that are like 2 strings and 2 open strings and 2 fretted strings, easy chords, like the easiest stringed instrument to play. But then you get some of them that are holding down 3 and 1 open string.
Right.
It's a little rough.
Yeah, so bass for me was something that was very easy to get into. And I think sometimes it you played bass as well. So people kind of think you're lesser than. But it's easy to get into, but it's very difficult to master.
Oh, man. You ever get into any Les Claypool?
Oh, yeah.
Who was your most inspirational bass player, real quick?
Oh, man. So I was really big into Metallica growing up. So I really liked Newsted. I really liked Trujillo when he got in there. And, of course, Cliff Burton before that.
Which one passed away?
Burton passed away. And Burton was really less of a bass player and more of a third lead guitar player. He really understood music well, but a lot of his stuff he did a lot of lead type stuff to me on bass, where Newsted was the complete opposite. And then Trujillo can kind of do both. And I always really liked Newsted a lot. But yeah, I was big into them. Yeah, I was big into Metallica for years. I really liked Duff McKagan with Guns N' Roses. I thought he did some really neat stuff. My mind was kind of blown whenever Sweet Child of Mine, there's that like second kind of little lead kind of part underneath what Slash is playing. I always thought that was a guitar, and then I found out, no, that's the bass. So yeah, I always like players like that. I discovered, kind of what I would call virtuosos, a little bit later, like Claypool, who just different playing it.
I saw him play this probably, it was in April. It was on my birthday. We went to a music festival in Atlanta, and he was playing with one of John Lennon's sons.
Okay.
The Lennon Claypool Delirium. They were covering Floyd and all sorts of stuff. It was interesting.
I remember the first time I saw Les Claypool was actually I was watching Woodstock when they redid Woodstock.
Oh, was it 99 or 94?
I think it was 99. Yeah. And so Woodstock 99, and they played Master of Puppets, and he was playing the guitar part on the bass, and it was the craziest thing I'd ever seen. And like I told you, whenever I discovered there was like a bass player magazine, then I discovered like Jaco Pastorius, Otto Burbridge,
yes.
All these like virtuosos. And I'm not crazy about everything Mudvayne does, but Ryan Martini is extraordinary.
I like a lot. Like Mudvayne's earlier stuff, but they had, and I kind of fell out of them. I haven't listened to them in several years, but they had sort of this middle period, and I don't know what they've been doing about the last half a dozen years.
Nothing.
I didn't think so. Did they? Yeah.
Yeah.
But man, that, like when they released like Not Falling, and man, they had like 3 or 4 songs that came out in like a 5-year period, and I was like, versus like their earlier stuff, like that song Dig.
Yeah.
That's actually how I got into them, and then I appreciated their later music much more.
I did too. I felt like it was more, I don't know, musical, I guess.
Yeah, it was.
It had a melody to it. He actually would sing rather than just screaming everything. So yeah.
You ever get into any Tool? Listening to Justin Chancellor?
Yes. So I always forget about Tool, but yeah. Yeah, I definitely like Tool. I love Maynard. Isn't that his name, Maynard?
Yes.
The guy that sings?
Yes, yeah, he does jiu-jitsu too.
I love anything he does. So I just love his voice. So Tool is incredible. I really liked A Perfect Circle. They were never Tool to me, but I really like them.
I've seen A Perfect Circle in concert once.
And Pussifer,
Okay, so check this out. Tool's got a new album coming out in August. They are releasing it on digital right now. A Perfect Circle had an album come out last year.
Right.
Pussifer's having an album come out next year.
Right. Yeah.
Maynard, he does these things to us.
There's nobody else that sounds like him to me.
Man, like sometimes I'm like, is this dude a prophet? Like, was he sent here? Like, because I can't. I've like almost studied his persona, like not on a degree like some people have, but just like he's an enigma. I can't think of a more fascinating person, like with not just like with the music, but like, okay, in the 3 different bands we mentioned, like we've done like numerous podcasts about Tool and Maynard. He's been in the mix. He's been on Joe Rogan's podcast several times too. Like, so I've seen that, and he does jiu-jitsu with Hickson Gracie and Henry Akins and some people that I've like my buddy Jack, who's been on this podcast, had lunch with Maynard.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. The wine industry. Have you seen what he's doing with like? So he has these wine orchards in Arizona. Makes his own wine. It's got a documentary about it. But he blows my mind. Like, just take like my approach is like, I'm just going to do stuff I enjoy, teach history, play music, martial arts, whatever it is. And Maynard's like that. But way better than me. I mean, dude, he was even showing this sick jiu-jitsu sweep the other day, and I was just like, that's cool, Maynard. I wish I was that cool. I wish people watch my videos as much as yours.
Yeah.
Because it was like his jiu-jitsu video had like thousands and thousands of views, and I'm just like, dude, all of my YouTube videos combined, which are like 500, probably have that many views.
So, yeah, I've always thought he was kind of... To have that much talent and creativity for 3 different bands always impressed me. But yeah, I didn't even know that he did these other things.
Did you know he went to West Point?
No, I didn't.
He was in the Glee Club. So, man, what else was I just thinking too? There's another thing about Maynard that's always just like, what? Because he's just diverse. Oh, okay. So I want to talk to you about this anyway. Just a great segue. Carl Jung. You ever, which I'm sure you have, like, so you teach psychology, you have a psychology background. What all classes do you teach, by the way?
So general psychology and human development are the 2 that they let me teach. I'm trying to get them to let me teach abnormal.
Yeah.
I want abnormal, but they usually reserve that for the full-time faculty members. And
do you guys cover Jung in any particular class?
No.
Is he a controversial figure?
Jung, I didn't get much of Jung in school either. The majority of psychoanalysis is spent with Freud. That's
contemporary.
Yeah, that's who you're going to get the majority of. And I mean, you learn about Jung, you learn about Adler, Horney, Erickson. You learn about some of the other ones a little bit, but really what you learn the most of, or at least I did, about Jung in my psychology degree, and my background, is that him and Freud had a falling out.
Yeah.
That's what you really learn about. So I really do try to bring in Jung a little bit. I don't do it a lot because the thing is they have trouble learning about, Freud and the others that the book tells them. So I'll supplement a little bit because I really like his, take on shadows, and dreams. I think he was better at dream content than Freud was,
Yes. The Tool song 46 and 2.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's a lot of Tool's works are inspired by Jung's different viewpoints on things. So pretty much when Tool's not singing about Jesus and stuff.
Right.
Dude, I'm telling you, man, between all of Maynard's bands, I'm like, dude, you sing about Jesus more than the church band I was in.
Yeah, so I remember hearing A Perfect Circle's Judith, which was kind of their breakout thing.
The Doomed. And there's a whole bunch of them. Yeah.
Well, yeah, and so I remember listening to that and loving it, but I had no idea really what he was saying. And so at the time, I was really, really uber Christian, everything was about Jesus and stuff. And so whenever I first read the lyrics, I was like, I can't listen to this anymore. This is so bad. And now I've come around to where it's like, it's words. People pull from the dark side.
What's cool is he writes one song about what in Christianity they call the Beatitudes, the sermon, like the message from the Sermon on the Mount,
right?
Basically. So, but then he'll have times where he's mocking. Mm-hmm. And they just have times where it's like, dude, are you a born again Christian, James Maynard Keenan? Or he's like. It's a quandary. He does blow my mind.
I would say, if I had to make a guess, and I don't know, of course, all I knew about him, you've kind of educated me today about a lot of what he's about. I just knew he's in 3 bands I like. I would make a guess that he sees value in Christianity in terms of some of the things that are
wellness.
Yeah, and the like you said with the Beatitudes, he sees value in that, but his problem is probably more with the messenger than with the message, because mainstream Christianity, and this is kind of a controversial thing to say, I think, especially where we live. Listens. Yeah, especially where we live in the Bible Belt, we're in the buckle of it. Mainstream Christianity is somewhat toxic to me, and people, I think, with the best of intentions, hurt other people.
Yeah. Oh, man, it's I totally get that, because it's take religion out of it, you'll get into a disagreement with your best friend, and it might not be often, but it's just man, we're people. Everybody's gonna fall short, disappoint somebody. It's like the spouse being an example, with your wife or something. It's just you're always, it's that's just kind of socially accepted, but it's long-term relationships with people, it's you're gonna have times where you don't agree on things, and that's what makes it a long-term relationship. Is okay, you're still my bro.
Yeah, but what mainstream Christianity does is we say, okay, we don't like this, so we're going to start another church. We're going to start another denomination.
Split off it, yeah. My church that I grew up in split numerous times.
Yeah. So what did you grow up in? What type of faith?
Okay, it was a Pentecostal church, but it was across the street from another Pentecostal church. Okay, so it was more along trending towards the Assembly of God, sort of. Dude, and in hindsight, after having learned and now lecturing on the Protestant Reformation, I'm just you guys didn't tell me all that. Mm-hmm. I've been with church for 19 years, and it definitely lends to my teaching of the ancient world in Western Civ 1, because man, we start off with Mesopotamia, Egypt, the Assyrians, Persians. The Assyrians are mentioned 139 times in the Bible. I did an 1.5-hour podcast on just that culture. Right. Fascinating. Because if you read the biblical account, they say that they're the descendants of Noah's son, Shem. Mm-hmm. Did he have a son named Shem?
Maybe.
Shem, Sham.
Yeah.
Ham, Shem, and Japheth, I think, were the... But it's just little obscure stuff like that. I was lecturing about Daniel in summer 2. I was teaching Civ 1. And I was talking about the Belshazzar's feast and the writing on the wall. There's an archetypal saying for you. Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh, you think this dude's cool? Let's talk about his 3 friends, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, okay, in a fiery furnace. And the students are just like, and I was just like, I'm not a Christian, by the way. Like, I don't identify with that, but I will constantly pull the biblical account. I'm like, here's what the biblical account is. And we're talking about the Hebrews.
Yeah.
So we have to mention the biblical account, but the book doesn't really go in. So it's like, if I just didn't have some background knowledge, or as a historian, I wasn't constantly being like, what's the biblical account say?
Yeah.
Because, like, man, it's like, why are you guys talking about Daniel in my Western Civ book? And, like, I'm going to look into that on both sides of the fence here.
Yeah.
So, super interesting. But, so it's like you can't even get around it. It's like it's taught, like, Christianity in the West, like, that is like a huge, it's a whole test for us in that class.
So you don't identify as a Christian.
No.
But you grew up with that background, so you understand it. So what do you identify as?
A Jew. I'm just kidding. If I was going to be anything, I'd probably be Jewish.
Yeah, they actually kind of discourage converts.
Yeah.
They're like the one religion who's like, that's okay.
Yeah, I know. It's well, and then too, so it's interesting too, that they're Messianic Jews. I'm about what you just said, man. Like, it's a great message. Sure. I mentioned this on the podcast the other day. It's like John Lennon was talking about, like, all the stuff. I heard him in like one of the last interviews about the things he aspired to be. He's like, those are just things that I heard about, and I was trying to be that, and then people equated me with those philosophies, which I was constantly falling short on.
Sure.
And I think we do that with Christians a lot. It's like, oh, you say you're going to be like Jesus, walk like Jesus, talk like. That's another Maynard reference from the last The Perfect Circle. I'm just like, but you don't.
Right.
You're kind of an asshole or whatever, you know. It's like, or like what's going on right now. I'll tell you the most. I don't know how much you've been following any local stuff going on. I never gave two cares in the world about local politics until I started trying to build a building on property that I owned for 12 months, and it was it still is a major production, but we think we have an out. But the mayor he became involved in that process, like 2 minutes into some interview, starts talking about his religious beliefs and the Bible and all this stuff, and I'm just like, dude, I don't want to hear that, man. Like, you're referencing the Old Testament. Like, let's go to one book before that when they were talking about committing atrocities to Assyrian children out of revenge.
Right.
It's like, essentially, we're on the Old Testament, you know. It's like, but I'm all for, like, separation of church and state. I don't like the sort of moral, like, we're not going to do this because of our ethics. And it's like, that's not how we're set up around here, guys. No. Yeah. But not to get into too super controversial. That's my opinion.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. So, like, I guess I would still identify as a Christian for me, but
do you go to church?
I do. And I will tell you, I go to a church where I know the pastor. You know, I know the pastor's belief systems. He was the guy you saw me the other day with having coffee with.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And so we get together occasionally and talk about things. The pastors that were there before, you know, I got there, I really enjoyed. But I was, so, you know Dana Thomason.
Yeah.
So Dana was my licensing supervisor. And I don't know if you know this about him, but he's a retired Methodist minister. I grew up Southern Baptist.
I think I did hear that. Methodist, you know. While we're on the topic, those Methodists, I kind of like this style. They're a little liberal. Yeah. I like it. Somebody was saying, I mean, I hate to use that term, but somebody's saying it's like, if the Baptists are the right wing of local politics, like the Methodists to the left.
Well, so yeah. So
depending on, I guess there's a schism there.
What I found out, exactly. So I was kind of done, and I didn't even know what I was. You know what I mean? And I didn't want to admit to myself I was an atheist or maybe even agnostic. Like, okay, there's a God. There's a God possibly, but I don't really care. You know, like if God's there, God's there. That's cool. I just need to live my life and be a good person, so on and so forth. So, but one day I walked into Dana's office and we're talking about this client that I had, and the problem with this client was their religious beliefs. They were so strict, and like God was such an asshole in their lives that like it was causing them psychological distress. And so you're supposed to work with the client's belief system, not against. so I went to him and I'm like, what do I do if this is the problem? And he's like, well, have you explored this? Have you talked with? So we talked about it a little bit, but he was curious, what's your religious background? And so I said, grew up Southern Baptist, got saved early on, was a Bible beater, hardcore Republican, like I was just bought into that right wing theology. And, if you didn't vote Republican, you weren't a Christian type thing. And
isn't that wild?
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean,
how that has made its way into the
yes. And so I'll go back to your point about church and state. What I think happened, but so in college though, man, every belief system that I had was challenged, and I just came out on the other end of it saying, I don't think I have all the answers like I thought I did.
I took 27. There's a Voltaire quote. I took 27 hours of philosophy.
Yeah.
And I just didn't have a philosophy degree at Tech.
Mm-hmm.
But, and it was all from the same guy.
Right.
And like Voltaire has this quote, it's like, a little philosophy will make you an atheist.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of philosophy will make you believe in God. So it's like but here's the weird thing is like 5 years after I got out of college, I was just like what it all started meaning to me.
Right.
And I think there's partially, it's like, I was 23 when I started going back to college, like the 5 years of really intense philosophy and then 5 years to think about it.
Mm-hmm.
And, arrived on the other side of that, like after accomplishing a lot of major goals and stuff, and started asking myself different questions. And, I'm with you too. And like maybe Maynard or whoever, it's like Christianity in its philosophy, like a lot of world religions, I love studying world religion, is great.
Oh, absolutely.
But it's just like the human being component or the messenger or whatever you want to call them.
Yeah. So Dana and me were talking about this, and I pretty much told him, like, I don't really know that I have faith anymore. And I said, there's a part of me that's bothered by that. I don't even like admitting that to you. And we kind of talked about like, what are the options for that? And so Dana gave me options that no one ever had. It was either you're a Christian or you're going to hell. That was the options that were given to me earlier. And he said, so one, you find another religion. He was like, if I wasn't a Christian, I'd probably be a Buddhist. Buddhism is really cool. I was like, okay.
It is.
And he said, two, you get rid of religion altogether. You can be a good person. You can have values. You can live a good life that's kind to other people without any type of God. Or three, you dig deeper in your faith and you realize what it means for you rather than what you've been told, So, I mean, there was this big dismantling portion of my life where I was trying to figure out, like, who is God to me? Who is Jesus to me? Because, Christians, like, are all about Jesus, and rightfully so, but simple tweaks to things matter. And so, like, I hear people like quote, I think this is Matthew, I can't remember the exact thing, but, I'm the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. Mm-hmm. And that's used to kind of say, like, if you don't know me, if you don't know the name Jesus, if you don't say Jesus in a prayer asking God, for forgiveness, you don't know God, therefore you go to hell. But man, I look at something like that now, and I'm all about the context of what happened in the Bible. This was told before he knew that he was going to die. He was going to be leaving these 12 people who were, I think we could make the argument, if we look at the biblical text of the 12 disciples, that they were kind of morons. Like, there were several times that Jesus was kind of like, okay, guys, come on.
Well, not to mention too that, like, Jesus had, like, let's just say those 12 guys were the tops.
Right.
He had such a large following outside of that. And some of those people were straight up zealots, like, hey, J-Dog, we need to, which is not a J in Hebrew, but like, we need to leave the Roman Empire.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
This Eastern client kingdom, it's not working out, bros. They gave that, plus they put Yahweh on a shelf with a bunch of other gods, right?
Yeah.
They said we have to call Caesar the son of God.
Yeah, exactly.
And so it's an interesting, like, I love studying the empire period.
Right.
Caesar Augustus being the Caesar in power when Jesus was born.
Right. And so when I see that verse, I more see him telling people he was their rabbi, he was their teacher, like, hey, you're about to not have a teacher, but I've showed you how to live. take care of the widow, take care of the orphan. And Jesus, to me, is a very political figure. That's what Jesus was. Like, he was the Son of God, but born in a manger, not born in a bloodline that was going to become an emperor.
When I read, this is actually straight out of the textbook, but there's this little thing where Virgil, the poet, is writing about this child who will come and save all of the world, and like just some of the key components to like the Jesus story,
right?
Like, and I read it and I set it up, and I'm like, who do you think that Virgil's talking about? And they're like, Jesus, duh. And I'm like, he's talking about Caesar Augustus.
Right.
They actually went by several of the same names. Like, and it's like, I don't even know how to interpret that. I'm like, it was because there's a sort of this emperor cult. So it's like, was there that, and there's an emperor cult, and they were sort of copying this messianic prophecy through the emperor cult, or was Jesus taking a dig at Caesar? I don't know, because like, why did they both go by Son of God or Son of Man?
Right.
And, they were both called the Messiah, and different things like that. It's fascinating to look at those parallels.
And I mean, there's so many things about Jesus's life that, like the virgin birth is really just this thing. It's like, but I mean, Romulus and Remus were a virgin birth. That's a kind of a dime a dozen.
Is there not that same story in Buddhism as well?
There may be.
The elephant delivering the child or something.
Sure.
There's some sort of creation myth or something there of like the first human or something.
Yeah.
But it's like, you survey a lot of world religions, you can't but see those parallels. I'll tell you what blows my mind, the Epic of Gilgamesh, dude. Got the same story as Noah in it, like almost 100%, but like some other parts, like, yes, Yahweh is just one of the Mesopotamian deities, and that's the one talking to the Utnapishtim over here, and that is the biblical Noah, and all the way to like the bird carrying the thing back to the ark, carrying the twig. And I'm just like, like when I heard, I'm like, okay, we didn't even know the Assyrians existed until 1848. Then we found Ashurbanipal's library at Nineveh. We excavated it, found the Epic of Gilgamesh and this Babylonian creation epic called Enuma Elish. And they're basically the account of Genesis.
Right.
The creation story and the flood story. And then like you take and you survey further, and it's like there are over 200 creation stories, and 2/3 of them contain a deluge, a flood type event. It's like what you're saying on digging deeper. That's for me. That's like that's how I dig. I'm
exactly. But so that's kind of my whole thing is Christianity early on was, and it was kind of pack mule morality, and it was fire insurance. Like, I was told there's a hell.
Dude, I've never heard about it like that, man.
Dude, that's what it was.
That's great.
We went to Judgment Day every Halloween where people got thrown to hell or they were saved. And it was kind of like...
we had a Hallelujah party down at my church, bro.
I mean, dude, how I became a Christian was I was told a story, okay? I grew up southern Louisiana. I grew up coon hunting, at night. And the one thing you worried about was coming up on snakes. And they told a story about little Johnny, his dog, and a rattlesnake.
Little Johnny gets in trouble.
Oh, yeah, little Johnny, so, yeah, he F's up. So, little Johnny found a rattlesnake. His mother told him, get rid of it, but he kept it anyway. It ended up biting the dog first and then him. So, in this story, the rattlesnake is sin. God is the mother telling him to, no, you don't want that. The dog is Jesus because he took the majority of the sin, and then the little boy was spared even though his dog died. Man, that's really effed up to tell like a 9-year-old, you know what I mean? And so that's how I became a Christian. So yeah, so like in my late 20s, early 30s, I had to figure out, what does this really mean to me other than I'm not going to go to hell.
He's my mom, God.
Exactly. Yeah. So, I really had to figure that out. And so for me, Christianity is, I don't know that it was ever meant to be a religion.
I think it's a great set of guidelines.
Exactly. Buddhism is a great set of guidelines. I think that what's remarkable to me about Jesus's life, because I think if we look at history, there was a historical Jesus. The pre-Easter Jesus is what Marcus Borg refers to. The post-Easter is what kind of became myth-wise.
Yes.
What people take literally, but it's really just myth. And myth loses power when it becomes literal. But we've tried to literalize myth, and I think that's one of the reasons that you're seeing millennials just leave the church, is because we've gotten rid of myth. Everything has to be literal. But when we refer to the pre-Easter Jesus, like, if these events happen where this dude led a political revolution, and then the religious zealots of the time and the emperor killed him because of his radical message, that's something I can get down with. But fire insurance, I don't really know that I need that anymore with my belief system today.
Man, too, here's another one that, and this is never popular with anybody, and it's not even my thesis, but there's a thesis out there. I don't even remember the author. I'm actually going to look it up so I can, but it's, the author's thesis is basically that Jesus didn't exist, that he was an archetypal creation by the Roman government to quell division in the eastern portion of the empire.
Interesting. I've never heard that theory, but that's interesting.
Let's see. Caesar Jesus. I'm gonna, because I want to get this. I want to get this on audiobook. Let's see. The Christ myth theory is what it's called. But I'll find it, because dude, I gotta get it on my Audible. I gotta get an audio version of it, because it's fascinating. But the basic thesis is like, okay, yes, the reason that Caesar, like this, the second Caesar, was it Tiberius, he does some different timelines and dating. Like, I'm not again familiar with the whole thesis, but he's basically saying like the reason there's all these parallels between the Caesar and Jesus is because the government did this. And then you go back further. What got me scratching my head on that was the fact that in philosophy, it's taught that that Socrates may have been that for the Greeks.
Interesting. Because if you look at the Roman Empire, like, Christianity became the official, religion.
So they were basically they had this system that was like, dude, Cody, you're down with Marduk? Like, I'm down with Mars, like, which is where we got martial arts from, by the way. I just found that out recently. But it's like, man, I'm down with Baal. We got some Aphrodite over here. We got some Yahweh. And then you have all these subjects in Palestine are like, pump the brakes. And I think this is like the origin of so much anti-Semitism too, is like, because I've always wondered, I'm like, why people hate Jews so much?
Right.
Like, it never made sense to me. And then I'm like, the number one thing I could see would be that, and this is how comes across in my textbook I use for class, is like, not that the system was totally fair, because like, but it's like to the Jews, but it's like, okay, so all the months we have still to this day, like, they're festival months for different deities and stuff like that. Like August is the month of Caesar Augustus. It's deifying him. Like, the July is Julius Caesar's month. They reformed the calendar together. But basically, the idea that because the Hebrews would not accept the open-mindedness, it's like, I just kind of joke around, it's like, it was Yahweh or the highway. It was like, no. We don't look at this coin that has Caesar's face on it and says Son of God, because that ain't Yahweh. Matter of fact, get rid of that coin. That was a big thing Pontius Pilate was dealing with the Jewish hierarchy, is they had just hung him up on this medallion that had been circulating. They were pissed, and he's just like, you people again. So I've been down this rabbit hole on like trying to understand, because it's like, man, this Romans is a book in the New Testament,
right?
And it's just like how much do Christians know about the Romans, and vice versa? And it's like, I literally just kind of want both sides of the story, so to speak. So it's, But that's been kind of my research. It's like, yeah, I had 19 years of church, and now I've been out of, went to college, and now I'm like in my mind doing my own critical assessment of the two sides of the coin. Of like, yeah, okay, I learned some philosophy. I've surveyed these world religions. I know this broad-based historical narrative I could start plugging and pulling facts into. But the Socrates thing is like, Socrates and Jesus never wrote anything. What we know from them only comes from their students, their followers.
And that's kind of one of the things that I learned when I dived into this about the Bible is, where did the Bible come from? Because I guess growing up, I just thought it was this like manual from heaven, if you will. But these
a lot
were
of people
oral
still,
stories.
I had 800 years after the fact in some cases.
Yeah, exactly. Like, these were oral stories that were passed on for, months, years. And so to think, that some of this wasn't changed from person to person, because you know how it is. If I tell you a story, when you tell it, you may emphasize other things, you may leave out a little detail, sometimes you will hear a joke you told someone, and then by the time it gets back around to you, you're like, well, that changed a little bit, or a story.
Even if it's, I saw a video doing this with gestures the other day. It wasn't even spoken word. One person did a gesture, they were like, but they did like 100 people.
Yeah.
And by the time it got to the end, it was nowhere even in the vicinity.
Right. When I used to work with kids more, I would do a rumors group, because kids are always like talking shit about each other. And so I would tell one of them a rumor. Yeah, I would tell one of them a rumor at the beginning of a group, and they didn't know this was going down, but I would tell them a rumor about, hey, did you know that so-and-so was doing this? And so then, of course, they don't just go, oh, okay, no, I didn't. Wow.
I'm telling little Johnny.
So then by the end of it, all of them have heard it. And I'm like, so what's the rumor about, whatever? And they're like, it may start out with, oh, he made out with this girl at McDonald's. But then by the time it gets to the end, it's like, dude's making out with, like
that's great,
some other chick, whatever. And so it changed. And I'm like, guys, you can't believe these things you hear, because they would always have this drama about somebody saying something or them hearing. But yeah, so if we go to the origin stories of the Bible, there's no way to me that someone could tell that story and it not then change a little bit, and even to be adapted for the culture that maybe it was told in.
Matt, yeah, I know. There's so many old like the story I mentioned a minute ago, like Daniel and the writing on the wall. I see that as a literal thing. Like I mentioned it being an archetypal saying. That's why I love Carl Jung so much, is dealing with archetypes. But it's like, oh, you mean this guy who worked for the government administration very closely, who was also a slave, saw the writing on the wall and predicted the downfall of the Neo-Chaldeans, the New Babylonians.
Right.
And it's like, well, maybe that's where we get the saying, hey, Cody, did you see the writing on the wall on that one? Because I did.
Right.
Man, you say that to anybody in the English language, they know exactly what you're talking about. Like, man, I think the writing on the wall.
You're putting it together, yeah.
And I think that is to be, like when I read that story now, I'm like, yeah, Daniel was the dude's like guy. He was like the Hebrew sort of go-between and all these things. So it's like, it makes sense that he would be able to predict that happening. He may even have seen envoys coming through and messages or things like that. But there's so many stories. My philosophy professor, Charles Bush, he only told me a couple of things he ever believed. Once was how you're supposed to knife fight, because he's former Green Beret and apparently was the knife fighting instructor. And I'm like, dude, you effectively have blown my mind. Because like he's like, for most of the time I knew him, he was like, he had his cataracts, his eyes were going bad, so he just kept his eyes closed all the time. When he would lecture, his eyes would be closed. I'm like, dude, you doing that on purpose? You're freaking me. I started working at the department, and I realized he'd be in there in his office and on his monitor, just like scratches on the screen and stuff. But he's like, oh, you're not supposed to hold, the knife like this. That's actually fake. You hold it like this. And then like he said a couple of things about it, and then he just like went back to like Immanuel Kant or whatever we were talking about. But he was just like, the Genesis story is not meant to, it was not about some woman betraying her. You know, he went in all the stereotypes on it. He goes, it's to show you that you're responsible, not a reptile. You know, your outcome is based on your decisions.
Yeah.
And two, I'll tell you something, because I want to talk to you a little bit about like a couple of subsets of what you do that you might have some, but like rehab science and addiction studies. Have you had very much dealings with that on your side of the fence?
So rehab science, no. Or I mean, and really with addictions, not a whole lot. Addictions, for me, is something that I'm not interested in the terms of actually ever working in it, because it's just hard work.
Yes. Like, I can only imagine.
Like the fail rate is unreal.
Why do you think that is? Is kind of like where I was really going with that.
Well, I mean, I don't think there's one answer necessarily to me to answer that. I think to start with treatment for addiction, we kind of have the wrong idea of what addiction is. You know, while there's definitely addiction to substances, to me, and I could be completely wrong with this, anything I say about any topic, I'm always open to being wrong.
Hey, me too, dude. You know? I don't know a whole lot. I'm just reporting what I heard.
Yeah, and so for me, addiction to something is not like, that's a symptom to me. You know, there's an underlying cause to this. Why, you know, did this person get addicted to something?
Yes. So what was the trauma from their childhood?
Sure.
Or yeah.
And I mean, when we look at the opioid crisis, some people have chronic pain.
Yes.
You know, and so the addiction came in because this made them actually feel better with chronic pain, but they weren't told that this is going to be highly addictive. You know
what? So basically this real quick, and then finish your thought. What if that is a metaphor for like knowledge of good and evil?
Yes.
Because there's no coming back in a way, like that metaphor of also chasing the dragon.
Yeah. So ignorance is bliss, right? And so, yeah, for me, the origin story in the Bible is not so much about God creating man and woman, you know, but it's about attaining knowledge and then being responsible, you know, for like your actions, and that, like, you know, like you now know better and you know these things. You can't, you know, just be ignorant anymore.
Well, and two, sometimes it is actions, and then sometimes it is a substance.
Yes.
So that's the fascinating point, is that in the biblical account is that it's like this apple represents something. Right. And it's like, yeah, that could be a metaphor, but it's like in our society right now, so many things, and it's like I've heard that metaphor of chasing the dragon for people on heroin and stuff. It's like that first time. I've heard people report this on a lot of different drugs, acid, different things. Is their first time they do it is always the best. It's
right.
Always blah, blah. And then never after that is it that again.
Well, the brain like adjusts, you know, and so that's one of the key issues is, you know, when you have that, it's new to the brain. You know, the brain doesn't know what to do with it. It's just this wild neurons firing, you know, whatever. And I've never done any type of drugs before. I've never even smoked pot, you know. So, like, I've never had any desire. I value control. Drugs are going to put me out of control, and I don't value that. So I never wanted to do anything like that. But, yeah, so you have that initial response, and then you're constantly wanting more, and that's why we see addiction escalate and people overdosing, is because the same amount no longer does the same thing. But addiction too is much more than just, to me, is more than drugs and alcohol. I mean, as I sit here, I'm still an overweight individual. I've lost a ton of weight.
Dude, how much weight have you lost, if you don't mind me asking? Man, if you don't care to get into it, because dude, like every time I see you, since we haven't known each other very long, but like I would say, like, you look better than when I first met you, and apparently when I first met you, according to the narrative of people around me, you're like, dude, Cody, you looking great, bro.
Yeah. So I've lost. I'm right now. I'm at about 350. The last time I weighed, you know, and I was around. I mean, you never really know the heaviest you were, but I was around 615.
Wow, so that is a lot.
Yeah, I've lost around 265 pounds, and I plan to lose much more. You know, I still want to do that
process.
But for me, like when we talk about addiction, food was very much okay. So drugs are going to put me out of control, but food is something I could very much control. And if you think about food, we utilize food for every emotion. Okay, so let's say, you know, something happens, you know, with your business, you know, something happens with the building, or, you know, it's
dude, it happened the other day. Exactly. I stress ate the other day.
It's a really shit day. So you come home, you stop by Papa John's or Little Caesars, whatever, you get a large pizza, you know, you get a pint of Ben & Jerry's, you come home and you eat your feelings, you know, and you're like, this sucked, this is going to make me feel better, boom. But then the next day, let's say the exact opposite happens and everything works out, everything's good, you know, what are you going to do? Well, you're going to celebrate. Maybe you'll stop and get a pizza and a pint of ice cream. So we use food with emotion entirely too much, I think.
How did you become aware of this?
Well, I mean, of it in myself or just in society in general?
I mean, both, because like I'm fascinated by this. Mm-hmm. Like, what is it in people? Like I made a post on our gym page today. What is it in people that makes them do what you did? That just like one day you wake up and you're like, I'm going to lose 300 pounds.
Okay, so part of it I think is personality. You know, like our personality matters. What we're raised in matters, and things like that. I believe we're pre-wired for certain things, but environment definitely does play a role in this. I don't think it's nature or nurture. I think it's both, and it's how they interact. And so for me, you know, growing up, man, I mean, I grew up in poverty. I would say it's working poverty, you know, and we had what we needed most times, but it was definitely a paycheck to paycheck. Oh gosh, how are we going to pay for this?
That's the reason I don't have kids yet. Like we're just getting ready to have kids.
They're black holes. Like, yes, they're black holes, man. I mean, I've got 2 and they are expensive.
We'll see how the podcast holds up after.
Yeah. So, but yeah, for me, man, it was just, I grew up eating all the bad things. Like my dad ate meat, you know, typically it was fried, potatoes. You know, typically they had a ton of butter.
Fried.
Yeah, a ton of butter, fried, gravy, you know, so just really, he didn't eat many vegetables or anything like that. And I ate how he ate.
Is he still alive?
Yes. But I mean, he's a type 2 diabetic, you know, like he has trouble controlling his insulin. He's in his late 50s, 60s. I can't remember his exact age. Okay, yeah. I kind of, in my mind. Sorry for all questions. No, it's okay. In my mind, he's still 45. At around 45,
isn't that weird, man?
Yeah, I kind of stopped, you know, keeping up with his age. So like sometimes something will be said about, yeah, I'm 59, and I'm like,
my dad's turning 60 next year, and it's weird. It's
exactly
weird.
It's weird. And so it's one of those, and he won't change. You know, he would rather take a pill.
It's what I'm talking about, but yet it exists.
So he goes to the doctor, and the doctor tells him, which doctors don't know anything about nutrition 90% of the time. It's not important in their training, but you know, we trust them because they're experts. The doctor says don't eat anything white, and in some instances that's pretty good advice. Like don't eat white processed bread, sure, but so my dad's like, okay, I can't eat a potato. Now, granted, a potato is high on the glycemic index, but so like a croissant has like will spike your blood sugar less than a potato will. I think we can agree a potato.
Yeah. You embrace a potato diet, do you not?
I eat potatoes, but a potato is better for you than a croissant. But so my dad will come home and he will say, I can't eat potatoes, but I'm going to eat 4 fried pork chops, you know, on sandwiches. And I tried to tell him, listen, like when you ingest excess anything, protein, carbohydrates, you know, your body's going to use that some way, shape, form. So he'll eat 4 pork chops, and then the next morning he wakes up and his blood sugar's high, and he's like, I don't get it. I didn't eat any potatoes, you know. And I'm like, maybe
we gotta get him on Joe Rogan's podcast, dude. Yeah, Dr. Rhonda Patrick.
Yeah, exactly. So for me though, okay, so I acknowledge, man, like I've overeaten my whole life. You know, I have. I know I have. College made that worse, you know, because in college I ate a lot of, you know, meat and potatoes at home, but then you get into a cafeteria where it's just salt, sugar, fat.
Dude, I'm addicted to chocolate milk to this day.
Exactly. And you have all this cafeteria, so it's like, hey, I just had a full meal. I think I'm going to go get some cereal too, just cause I want it. Yeah. I'm going to get some chocolate milk just cause one semester, man, I was kind of like hanging out with this girl a lot, and she ate breakfast every day, and so we realized, okay, we could eat Monday, Wednesday, Friday together. Well, so the first day we eat breakfast, I show up and I've got like, a chicken biscuit and a drink. And this chick's rocking like 2 chicken biscuits, and a whole like quart of milk, because the university I went to had a dairy farm. So the milk was legit. And so I'm like, how the hell is this girl eating this? Like she's pretty tiny.
I know all these tiny girls that live on milk.
Well, so I started eating like her. And so it would be one of those things where like Monday I'd grab the chicken biscuit, she'd get the milk, then, vice versa. But dude, I was gaining weight nonstop. And so one day I sit down and I talked with her and I was like, well, she goes, hey, chicken biscuits, you get the milk. And I said, actually, get me like the wrap, the grilled chicken breakfast wrap this morning. I'm going to cut out the fried chicken biscuits. And so we got there and she's like, what's going on? And I said, look, I don't know how you're doing this, but like my pants barely fit right now. Like I'm about to have to go up a size. I've got to stop eating this much. And she was like, oh yeah. So I manage the women's basketball team. I'm a manager, and they're like a person short this semester in practice. So I fill in and I work out with them. So I just lift weights.
Burning all these calories.
Yeah. So she actually had to increase her calories.
Is this in college? Like working out with a college team?
Exactly, because she was losing so much weight. But so in college I overate, and I worked a pretty active job. But once I got into grad school, my eating habits didn't change, but my lifestyle did. I started working more behind a desk, type job. And then I got out of that. So what caused me to change was my wife. I mean, I married up, in like, too. Yeah, I look at our wedding photo and I'm like, why the hell did she marry me? Like,
probably for all the right reasons, dude.
Yeah, but I'm like, I just don't get it,
Because dude, think how trivial of her. Like, my wife is beautiful.
Yeah.
But and how my values have changed because as like a teenager or whatever, it's like, oh, this girl is so hot.
Right.
She's hot. But it's like, that's just not, is that really important or looks really important?
Right. And she married me because of my personality, because of who I was. And that's a good thing. I joke about that, but she was terrified of me passing away. She was terrified of losing me. And so she would talk to me constantly. And dude, I wasn't ready to make change. Like the single greatest thing I know about counseling was taught to me in grad school. I really messed up in a session with someone, and I learned this. And so it's not anything complicated or hard, but the pain to stay the same has to become greater than the pain to change, because change is hard and painful. And so for me, I had to recognize the pain in my life of things like, can I go to this movie theater? We want to go to a movie as a family, but can I fit in the seats? Like, that's where I was, you know what I mean? And, when we bought my daughter's car, I could not test drive it, because I couldn't fit in the damn thing. So, right? So there was all these things. And so one, my wife was worried about me. Two, my wife was a prisoner because of my weight, because if I couldn't do it, we couldn't do it type thing. And she was just terrified, that she was going to lose me and everything. And so I don't know that I really valued myself at the time enough to make that, like, if I wouldn't have been married to her, I don't know that I would have made this change. But her and I'm all about, and this is just how I kind of live my life. This is how I do counseling. I'm all about values. Like, what do you value in your life? And then do your actions reflect what you value? Because, if they don't, then maybe you don't truly value that as much as you think. So for me, I had to come to the conclusion that I ate like to make myself feel better because my life was painful. But that was a vicious cycle that was only causing me more pain.
Yeah. That's a great way of looking at it.
And so we left the Big and Tall store. I went and bought some new shirts and stuff because I gained more weight. And I remember we were in the truck and we were leaving, and my wife looked at me and she said, so what size shirt did you buy? And I said 6XLT. And she goes, so on their window they say they sell to a 7XLT. And I said, yeah, that's right. And she said, what do we do whenever you don't fit in a 7XLT anymore? Because because she already knew, like, you know, I'm not losing weight. I'm actually gaining weight. And I said, no, I'm going to do something. I'm going to do something. And so that's kind of that, and just a really hard conversation about her being scared of losing me realizing like she's starting to resent me because she's a prisoner of my life, of my weight. And so, you know, what my personality type is extreme. That's just how I am. If I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it. Exactly. You know, like that's just how I've done things. And so whenever I was in college, man, I've done every diet that I think is imaginable. I've done carb busters or sugar busters, whatever it's called, which is basically, you know, a different variation comes out every now and then. Keto, Atkins, all of those are very similar to me. I've done Weight Watchers. You know, I've done, man, one time I lost a ton of weight doing 1,200 calories. You know, I did 1,200 calories a day, and I was like working out nonstop. So I was probably burning, you know, at least 400 or 500 calories. So I really wasn't getting a whole lot of caloric intake. So my body was burning fat, and I lost like 60 pounds. But the problem was, as soon as I quit eating 1,200 calories, I didn't change the nutrition. I just changed the portion. And whenever I went back to eating what I normally ate, I blew back up plus some. And that's psychologically difficult to suffer.
I deal with that with people in the gym. Sometimes it's a trade-off.
Yeah. So to suffer and gain something and then to lose it, man, psychologically, that's terrifying and hard. So, but in college, man, I met this dude. I worked with him, and his name was Will. And, dude, Will was a vegan. But he was like the most ripped vegan I'd ever seen in my life.
Dude, I've seen some ripped vegans.
Yeah. And so vegan for me was typically like a hippie, really pale, you know, like they're low in B12, so they're going to die.
We call them also Wooks in my end of the world. That's why that print has a Wookiee on it. Okay. Because those are the people that go to that type of music festival.
Yeah, so that's what it was. But one night, a lot of times, and I would say he was probably vegan 90% of the time, vegetarian the other 10. But he would eat pizza. And so I would stop and pick him up a pizza, and he would eat a little bit of cheese occasionally. But he always, like, I didn't know this at the time. I didn't know that he was a vegan. I didn't know that he was a vegetarian. I just knew he liked cheese pizza. So one night I stopped by Papa John's, and it was one of those things where I was working 11 to 7. So I gained a ton of weight when I was doing that because I would eat to keep myself awake. You know, energy.
Yeah.
But I stopped by, and they were having a thing like you buy a large pizza, you get, you know, a medium cheese for $1. So I grabbed that, and I went to work, and I was like, hey bro, your pizza's in the closet. So he goes in, he goes, oh man, I can't eat this. And I'm like, why? He goes, they gave you the wrong pizza. They gave you a pepperoni pizza. And I was like, why can't you eat a pepperoni pizza? He was like, well, because I'm kind of like a vegan, dude. I was like, bullshit. You're not a vegan.
You're Jewish. You can't eat pork. Admit it.
And he goes, well, I'm a vegan 90% of the time. I do eat a little bit of cheese, but I feel bad about it. And so I felt really bad he couldn't eat the pizza. But I started talking to him. I'm like, dude, I don't understand this. Like, you're massive. You know, you're athletic. Like, dude was like 6'6" and had a ton of muscle. And so he kind of talked to me about why he had went vegan. He played college ball. He was constantly getting injured. And an athletic trainer who was vegan told him, you may have a very inflammatory body. And if so...
I think that's what I have, dude.
Yeah. He said, if so, this could possibly help you. And so he started out doing it, and inflammation got better. He'd get injured, but he healed quicker, and then eventually he wasn't getting injured anymore.
Maybe I need to look into veganism. I'm worried about vitamin deficiencies more than anything.
Yeah. So, and I understand that, but so I did that. And I lost like, in 30 days, bro, I lost 2 pant sizes. I felt great.
Wow.
I was playing bass at church, and it was one of those things, dude, I would put that bass on, 10 pound, 11 pound bass. I'd play it.
Notice the difference.
Yeah. And so I'd take it off, and, then the pastor would preach, and there was a couch like in the lobby of the church. And I would go out the back way, and sometimes I would have to lay on that couch because I was so tired.
Oh, wow.
Because I'm carrying my own weight plus 12 pounds
now,
playing.
I didn't think about that.
Well,
it's obvious.
I noticed, like, after about 30 days of being vegetarian/vegan, losing weight, feeling better, I didn't have to go lay down. You know what I mean? And so I kind of kept it up. But it was really hard for me because I wasn't in college. I wasn't cooking much. And socially, food is a huge thing. You know what I mean? And so it was really hard. So eventually I just said, okay, I'm going to eat meat. Well, guess what? I started eating meat again, and I gained all the weight back.
Damn.
So here we are. I'm married. I'm sitting on my couch at home. My wife is crying. I don't remember what initiated this kind of, breakdown of her just saying, I love you, but this life is too hard for me. I'm worried you're going to die type thing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I told her, I said, listen, the only time in my life that I have ever just lost weight and I didn't feel like I was dieting, I didn't feel like I was losing something, was when I went vegan. And I said, there's this movie that I've been told to watch, and it's Forks Over Knives.
Oh yeah.
And so we watched that, and my wife is a vegetable eater.
Dude, I want to. Let me pause real quick.
Yeah,
I have to pee so bad, like right when we were playing music, level bad.
Yes,
but for you, I want to hear about Forks Over Knives because I want to hear what your take is on that. I'll be right back.
Yeah. Yeah, no, you're good. I just thought, if they recycle, let me just set this here. So, but yeah, I didn't want you to think, man, this dude didn't throw shit away. Dude, those are some of the, they are so social.
I know.
I love it.
He's the sweetest of the two.
Mm-hmm.
It's weird how they have it. It's just crazy different personalities.
So yeah, we have one smaller dog. And my wife wanted a lap dog, and the first few months we had her, she was a puppy, but then she settled into that role, and now, dude, that's all. My wife will be trying to work, and the dog's trying to get on the computer.
Our cats get like that, man. If I'm ever working on this computer and the cats are around, it's when typically my fatter house cat is right here. She is just when we got her, she's already fixed, but she was a kitten, so her head's small, so her body is disproportionate to everything. Her head's small, but her body is large, and it's just funny. She's like a little low rider rolling around because she's always my buddy in here and stuff. Yeah. So Forks Over Knives.
Yes,
I'm trying to. Okay, so I remember getting exposed to this, but. That is not the documentary that caught all the flack for sort of pseudoscience.
No, I don't think so.
What was the one that came out a year ago or something on Netflix? Everybody watched it and was freaking out, but it had a real vegan slant to it.
I think that was What the Health.
Well, that's it. Yeah. But Forks Over Knives, I heard about that in college in biology, actually.
Yeah. And so What the Health was not a bad movie per se, but it was, I agree with a lot of what's in that movie. Let me say that. But it was really sensational. It was kind of a sensationalist movie, and it was really easy to kind of pick it apart. Now Forks Over Knives, I mean, it was a movie about how a plant-based diet, which these terms
nutrients,
these terms that we use can get perverted, just like Christianity or anything else. So but a plant-based diet, I mean, you're seeing now we see the Impossible burgers, plant-based.
Yeah, what do you think? Have you had an Impossible burger?
I think that's bullshit. No,
I kind of do too.
Yeah. Here's the thing. As someone which I don't like to call myself a vegan, I don't really like the V word. I think it has a militant connotation to it where, if me and you were sitting here.
You get stereotyped, man.
Yeah, and if you're eating a beef burrito and I'm eating a bean burrito, I'm not going to be like, do you realize the ecocide or anything like that? I'm not going to be an asshole to you or anything. But so I don't really, plant-based is being used now a lot to market things. It's kind of becoming a trend. And just
antibiotic free.
Yeah. Like chicken, gluten-free. Of course chicken is gluten-free. It's meat, unless it's breaded, it's gluten-free. But so a whole foods plant-based diet is what I'm talking about. And that's where you take minimally processed food, plants, and you eat that. And so a vegan diet, man, I mean, you can eat Lay's potato chips and, drink Coca-Cola. You know what I mean?
I see a lot of vegans that they aren't the like your buddy. They aren't the pinnacle of health.
Right.
And oftentimes they're getting vitamin D or I mean, man, a lot of people, particularly in Arkansas, that time of year will get D deficient. That's not uncommon.
Yeah. Well, and the thing, it's not uncommon to get D deficient even as a meat eater.
Yeah. K is one I hear about a lot.
And so we have to be mindful of that no matter what we eat. But I think one of the things that we're going to see, and I'll get back to the Forks Over Knives whale thing, but I think that one of the things that we're going to see is in 5, 10, 20 years, we're going to really start seeing vegans that are just as unhealthy as people who eat a lot of processed foods that have meat in them and stuff because of the Impossible, the Beyond, like, you know, it's junk.
It defeats the purpose
exactly.
of the...
Like, yeah, I mean, you know, the saturated fat in an Impossible Burger, I mean, it's from coconut, you know, coconut oil or whatever, but it's still saturated fat. It's still going to clog arteries. So, but going back to the forks over knives thing, and that's really, they're eating a plant-based diet in its correct form, in my mind, which is a lot of leafy green vegetables, you know, whole grains.
You ever juice?
No, I don't juice. Now I do, and see, in the plant-based world, some people are about juicing, some people aren't. I tend to kind of be on I'm not really for juicing because I want the fiber of food. Smoothies is kind of that middle ground for me that I like because I get the fiber, but I still get the, you know, antioxidants and things like that. I'm not saying juicing is wrong.
I like it every now and then. We dabbled, and we have a really nice juicer. I forget what. It's one of like the Ninjas or something. It's a nice juicer, and there's certain things that I like being able to juice, like beets and ginger and some turmeric. There's some things like that I think it's easier to get the health benefits from juicing them, but like we don't do it very often. But the leafy green vegetables, see, I'm not like much of a salad eater. That's what made me think of that.
I'm not either. You know, I never have been really. But yeah, so yeah, man, when we first did it, I'll tell you, we did it wrong. You know, we really weren't eating a plant-based diet. We were eating a little vegetarian, vegan with more processed things, you know, involved. We were still leaning heavily on that as we gave up products, and I still ate cheese for probably, I'd say, the first 6 months to a year. And honestly, dude, I never would have said this before. I never would have thought this. Cheese was harder to give up than any meat, dude. And people are like, no, I could totally give up cheese before I gave up bacon or beef. You know, I could totally give up cheese before that. But man, the thing is, if you put a beef burrito and a bean burrito side by side, smothered in queso, both of them are going to taste wonderful because of the queso. You know, if you take away the queso off both, you know, like that bean burrito especially now is not that impressive, you know, at first when you're used to eating that. But what I found was, for me, and again, going to my personality, I wasn't getting great results. I was losing some weight. I was feeling a little better. But whenever I ate cheese, I wanted more cheese. Whenever I ate cheese, I wanted meat. Like it was like that addiction factor for me was there.
What do you think? Was cheese? I mean, was cheese like that? Like, was it like an addictive property, hard to give up? Like, or like, did you notice like what you're saying earlier with like your energy levels? Did you notice like when you kick cheese that it was like you noticed the effects? Or
so I will say that food is addictive in nature. Like. And food is engineered to be addicted. Like these food industries, the food industry spends millions of dollars every year to figure out how to make your dopamine fire. You know, like take ice cream for instance. Ice cream to me is a good example of that. If we take a pint of ice cream and we just set it out here while we're doing this podcast, we don't touch it, we don't eat it, it melts in the container, and then we pour a little bit in a bowl for me and a little bit for you. You know, and anyone else. Would people really want that? No. It's going to be just this like thing that makes us kind of like, we're going to take a bite of it and we're going to be like, oh, this is going to make me sick.
Weird.
Right? But it's the same thing. It's just not frozen. There's nothing in nature that is that sweet for us. And by freezing we're tricking our brain. Our brain is not going to say, well, this is probably going to make us sick. The freezing it is the key to making ice cream palatable. If you take it and let it melt, you're not going to want it. You're going to go either freeze it or throw it away. I don't want melted ice cream. But it's the same product. It's just served in a different way. So the food industry is really good about figuring out what is it that's going to make our dopamine fire in our brain. What is it that's going to give us that, you know, when we take a bite of it for the first time, if we've had a stressful day, if we've had a happy day or whatever. So, you know, for me, cheese did that very much so.
Love cheese. Cheese, peanut butter, and gravy, man. Yeah. Like you put any of that on anything.
Yeah. So cheese did that. So I realized as we were doing this, okay, I'm not really getting the results that I want. Like I'm reading about all these people who went plant-based and I lost all this weight. And I'm like, man, I've lost like 10 pounds in 2 months, but you know, like, or 3 months, but And I would notice if we had pizza, like we'd go to Papa Murphy's and pick up a couple of
Rest
pizzas.
in peace, dude. They're gone. They closed.
Man, I just bought pizza there like 2 weeks ago.
They closed last week.
Whoa.
Sign of the times here in Polk County.
They were pretty expensive, but the quality,
they had a big customer base, man. Everybody is upset that they closed. Yeah. Corey and I didn't eat there a whole lot, but we did probably half a dozen times over the years.
Sure. But whenever we would do that, I would notice, okay, if I eat pizza on Sunday, on Monday, I'm trying to figure out, like, how do I get that fix again? Like, how do I get cheese again? You know what I mean? And so I realized, okay, I've got to stop it. I've got to get off cheese completely, and that was hard. But did it really? Started trying to do more whole foods too, less processed things, and so doing that, I started seeing weight drop drastically. It was a huge thing, and a part of that is, one is just good nutrition. I was putting better things in my body than I was, but two, plant foods are generally lower in calorie content, than meat, eggs, and dairy. Meat, eggs, and dairy usually have a higher calorie content than their plant, like sides and things like that. So I was also probably getting less calories and I lost weight because of it. But what interested me about Forks Over Knife specifically was any diet, keto, you can lose weight doing keto, like you can lose weight taking chemotherapy, like weight loss was always what I chased. And I kind of came
wellness.
Exactly. Wellness is now what I've become interested in. And so, there's a lot of different perspectives when it comes to wellness. I'm what I would call a plant-based evangelist. Like, I believe in the power of a whole foods plant-based diet. I'm not talking about going buying Gardein vegan burgers. That's bullshit. I don't eat crap like that. I'm talking about brown rice, purple rice, red rice, sweet potatoes, beans, kale, spinach, mushrooms, tomatoes.
What's your favorite kind of beans?
Man, we eat a ton of black beans.
We do too. Yeah.
Love black beans, but honestly, I probably prefer a pinto bean.
Dude, I love like Cora does. It's not a real big. Well, I'll say like, I think it's because she ate them growing up, and like maybe I was like I always like am picking her. I'm like, do we not eat beans because you equivalent that with being poor when you were a kid? Yeah. And like, I think for pinto beans, it was like very much like her dad made them all the time.
Yeah. So a black bean is really kind of, to me, it's not as versatile. You know what I mean? Like a pinto is really creamy and really versatile to me. A red bean, on the other hand, is really starchy and has no flavor at all. You really have to soup whatever the dish is. That's why red beans and rice traditionally has a ton of butter, a ton of sodium, and a ton of, heat with it. But yeah, so like those are the things that I believe are health promoting foods. And that's what I try to eat, in a day. I think it's important that we eat these healthy foods because what I see is, as a society, we are leaning more on the unhealthy foods. And I would say meat, eggs, and dairy, like if you're going to eat them, I think it should be a small part of your diet and you buy the best quality that you can, so it has as minimal effects. But like what we're seeing is, we're getting away from farm to table, which there's a movement for that. But for the most part, you don't know where it's coming from. You don't know how it was processed. Chicken is packed with sodium, from the assembly line, this big food industry, doing all this crap to our food. And so, yeah, it's one of those things where, like, for me, I ate too much of it. I didn't eat a serving of it, even a meal. I ate like 3 servings in a meal with no vegetables or anything like that. I just believe in, and for me, wellness. I knew, man, at 600 and some pounds, 6XLT t-shirt, size, 60 pants maybe I was in. Okay, my body was not meant for this, and I have probably done damage. I am interested not in weight loss. I have an uncle who is a size 28 jeans, and that dude is constantly having health issues,
Yeah, I know this orthopedic surgeon I've been training martial arts with, ironically, 71, but he had heart surgery.
Right.
And he's a doctor.
Right.
And he's like, don't eat meat. That's what he told me.
Yeah.
He's like, you see this? He's like, that's from eating too much meat.
Yeah, and so, it's one of those things, man. Not only that, okay, so I will say this. I don't think that meat is just this evil food. There are nutrients in meat. Okay?
Yeah, yes.
There are. But there are also downsides. And if you eat too much of it, I mean, Caldwell Esselstyn, who's one of the guys in Fortune, would tell you the fat in it's going to damage your endothelial cells. You shouldn't ever eat meat. And I don't eat meat. I don't want to eat meat. I never will eat meat again. But there are some nutritional things there, but there also could be some damage. But then you take meat and you serve it at McDonald's. Now there are no nutritional things. You know what I mean? So like if you are going to eat meat, you have to eat the best quality that you can. And even then, I think if you eat too much of it, especially, you could have damage. And this is just my opinion and what I subscribe to with the research I've done. But yeah, I just, more and more, man, we're living this drive-through diet, you know, where, I mean, it's gotten progressively worse. And I think Forks Over Knives did a really good job of this to show, okay, this is how we used to eat. Then the supermarket was introduced. Processed foods came into play. Processed meat, processed wheat.
Advertising, too, like we mentioned with gluten-free and stuff. It's like that coming around in the 20s and stuff, but or like earlier 1900s.
Well, so the food industry in itself is dangerous because we started out eating a certain way, you know, I mean, and then, you know, we got supermarket processed foods. Buying all the food in the inside aisles is pretty terrible for you in most cases. Then we get diners and drive-ins. Then we get fast food. And they do a really good job of showing that. And so Diet Fiction is a movie that is kind of on Amazon Prime right now and things right now. We just watched it the other night. I don't know how new it is. But
I'll check it out, yeah. I got Prime.
But what they were really good about in that, I feel like, was where Forks Over Knives talked about the food industry, Diet Fiction talks about the diet industry and how when obesity became a public health epidemic, the diet industry swooped in, they made a ton of money, and they made everybody confused.
Yeah, true that.
Why is health so confusing? It's because, and this sounds conspiracy-like theory.
Yeah, I'm conspiratorial minded.
Here's the deal to me. Dead people don't make money. Healthy people don't make money. But sick people do. Okay?
In an industry.
Exactly. So you have the food industry, the diet industry, and big pharma keeping us alive but sick. And that's what's making money. To me.
There is a documentary out there called Something and Nearly Dead or something like that.
Yeah, Fat Sick.
Fat Sick and Nearly Dead or something like that.
Yeah. I haven't watched that one, but I need to. I love documentaries.
Me too, man. I'm always on my classes, man, because like we were talking about teaching methods and we're playing music and stuff, but like the number of like I've become aware, like I was mentioning earlier, it's like I need to get a audio copy of this book because like that's how I'm self-aware now that audiobooks, and I was still trying to stick with reading.
I'm very auditory as well.
But like I'm like 7 pages in and I'm like, man, what does a couple of pages say?
Yeah.
Like
you kind of count the chapter.
Yeah, and then I'm like, it's like only 20 more pages till I can get up. You know, whereas like, I'm rocking my textbook on the way to work today, you know. So it's just, I'm always playing a podcast in the background or doing something like that. Audio is where it's at for me.
Yeah, a lot of times when I'm like brushing up on something, I'm like, okay, I need to brush up on Gestalt. Instead of looking at the textbook, I will find like a good video. A lot of times a resource I'm using for the class, I'll put in a Blackboard. You know, I'll listen to Khan Academy teach about Gestalt just so it's fresh on my mind, because I would rather do that than take out the textbook and read it, you know. But yeah. And so that was for me with Forks Over Knives. It was like, okay, I'm going to watch this and I'm going to enjoy it because it's a documentary. If I get something from it, fantastic, you know. And so that kind of started me where I am, and then I've kind of tweaked things along the way. I'm constantly trying to eat greener, healthier foods and things like that. But yeah, so
what's your favorite green vegetable?
Kale and broccoli, those two things.
How do you eat your kale, man? I can't ever get into kale.
I like it raw best.
So you just like a salad?
Yeah,
just raw kale.
So what I like to do, I used to like hide it in things. Like I would like put it in the food processor and like just.
That's why I was asking about juicing.
Almost emulsify it. I mean, the fiber and everything's still there, but get it so chopped up, I throw it in a soup or something. So it's like I'm not really having to chew it. But now I really like the chew of kale. But the way that I prepare it is I take it off the stems, you know, tear it up, cut it up, whatever, and then I put some sort of acid on it, lemon juice, some type of vinegar apple cider or balsamic, and then I just squeeze the crap out of it to break down some of that fiber. That's the key to getting kale to where it doesn't like choke you. But yeah, it's really good. So I don't really eat a lot of salads, but I eat a lot of things that I serve over greens, if that makes sense. So like, I mean, it's not uncommon for me. My family doesn't necessarily like this, but I do it. I may make beans and stuff like that, but I will put it on top of just a bed of kale, and it's more of a soup with kale in it. But yeah, and then I love
we do some salads like that where Corey makes some salads of black beans or pinto beans. It's different.
I'm all about cruciferous vegetables. Cruciferous vegetables, yeah, or the bet like talking about like your friend that's a doctor that said don't eat meat. This is what causes. Cruciferous vegetables will actually improve blood flow when you eat them. They oxygenate the blood. Broccoli, kale, cilantro, parsley, those are wonderful for you.
Do you grow any of your own vegetables?
So, man, for me, that's honestly, I told you, like, I'm constantly trying to progress. That's, for me, is probably the next step,
in the future,
to start trying to grow my own food. We've got about 3 acres where I live that we do nothing with.
Dude, where do you live? Without, like, doxing your address on the podcast.
I live in Dardanelle.
Okay, yeah, cool. Yeah, so I didn't know how far you're coming, because I was at the music store, like, playing guitars and stuff, and you said you head this way, and I was like, I've done it again. Because I've never had a podcast guest here waiting on me, but one time I got tied up at the university on my way out, and I had a guest that was going to meet me here, and I'm like, dude, I'm so sorry if you're there.
Yeah, no, I saw you texting me that, and I'm like 30 minutes away, so
perfect.
It's good. No,
you live close to Dardanelle, or
I live on the outside of it.
Did you guys have any flooding?
No. We're too far away for that. I was worried during that because I'm not from this area, so I was like, are we somehow going to flood?
Do you take the back way to get to Morrilton, or
Pottsville?
Okay. Well,
yeah.
Yeah.
So what I do is I go through, like, a lot of times I take the interstate so I go through Pottsville, then on the interstate. But what I really like to do is go through Pottsville, then just turn there by the Dollar General and go through Atkins. It's an easy drive. Yeah, but that's how I usually do that.
Cool. I guess some people that live over around more like Centerville will take like the Petty Jean way. Yes. Is that a way you can get?
Yeah. So
I've never driven that way to Morrilton, but
yeah, we actually I went to a conference that was on Petty Jean Mountain, and so
Rockefeller Institute.
Yeah, it was so easy to get there from where I live. Just really easy to just go the back way. I don't do that. I don't know if that would be shorter for me than Pottsville. I need to look at that, but yeah, it was a really good drive, pretty drive. So yeah. Honestly, my goal, like, I want to move.
Where, like, what direction?
So, my wife works in Russellville. I work in Morrilton. So, honestly, I kind of like Pottsville because if I can get near the interstate.
Great school district.
Yeah. Well, and so the thing is, the reason we're not is my youngest daughter has like 3 more years in high school. So, we want to let her finish high school at Dardanelle. She doesn't want to move. So, after that, my wife does not want to move. I do. So, I'm trying to talk her into, let's move to Pottsville. So, work is 15 minutes for me. Work is the same, if not less, for you, and we're good. But we'll see.
Man, I honestly just never want to move. I tell Corey that all the time. I'm just like, we'll just build a carport, add on a sunroom, and never, ever get another house ever as long as we live. We'll get new siding, too. But we're not moving.
Yeah.
But like, moving to, like, Pottsville or Crow Mountain area, I think would be... but, dude, here's the thing, man. Like, I anticipate being at that job for probably 10 years. Beyond that, I don't know. I was telling you earlier, like, I've got my 10-year plan mapped out, but it's like when I'm debt free, and that may occur before 10 years. I don't know, because like basically, like, I have some student loans, but I don't even know, like, they're a non-issue because of that job.
Sure.
The non-issue plus leisure is a non-issue because of that job. If we want to go do things,
it just makes your life more comfortable.
It does, and then like, so like, just things like, I mean, we have like the business. It's like we obviously can't pay ourselves everything that we make out. It's like we have a fixed income with what we pay ourselves from the business, but like that being the situation, like something like we're about to get gutters put on the house like on Monday. It's like $600.
Oh, dude!
But it's an on. It's just like
yeah. We just had new gutters put on. That was like $2,000 for us.
Oh, dude, I've heard that. Yeah. I've got a gutter guy.
Yeah.
That he did the gym. He's doing my house. He bid me the gym again. I'm talking like the gym's 100 foot of gutter with 4 downspouts, and he was bid me. And he says that. He says people hit you like a $2,000 quote, and he's doing my all new on the front with 3 downspouts, and on the back portion of my deck with 2 downspouts. And he's telling me how he's going to do it, and he's putting it to where this one up here has a guard because I got the pine tree. And he's like, yeah, it'd be like $600.
Yeah. So for me, I had 3 people bid it, and the guy that I went with was actually, he was not the cheapest, but what I liked about him was he actually pointed out, like, we've had some drainage problems with all the rain we've got. And he was like, dude, the reason you're having problems is, like, the way that they did this, you need another downspout here. He said they angled everything towards this back end of the house, and the gutter can't, like, get rid of it, so it's coming over.
Yeah.
And so he actually pointed out, like, there are problems, and we can do, you need to do this. And so we've done that, and now we're not having those, issues when it rains and stuff. So
I'm about to get drainage out, French drain in my driveway.
Yeah.
Like because the driveway out here wasn't always a pull through. Like we had this pad put in, and I'm continuing to build that pad up next to my deck. So we want to do a carport out there eventually, and that'll be when I make my move of like that studio, go out there. I'll put some mats down, hang a heavy bag.
Yeah.
It'll be great. We missed a narrow window where I feel like we could have built like a shop house next to the gym before they changed the zoning.
Yeah.
But that is not, but Cora never wanted to live at the gym, so.
Gotcha.
Oh. Anyway.
Yeah, so for me though, with like where I work, so like that's my main squeeze. Like, that's, and it's.
How long have you worked there?
Man, I've worked there. I think this is, oh God, I think this is I'm going on my 7th year.
You're one of the first people I met when I started working there for whatever reason. I think it's because we all went out to lunch.
Right, yeah. Because Dana invited me. Dana always kind of included me with that. And so
he's great. I called him yesterday when I was leaving because I've been trying to get him to come in. I've done several privates with him in jiu-jitsu. And he needs kind of like, I'm trying to get some old, like, okay, like, so like one of our transitions, like growing the adult side of what we do is getting more people like, not yourself per se. You're kind of still that age where it's like, I see tons of people sign up. They're 32 years old.
Right.
But like 40-year-olds, 45-year-olds.
Right.
So like we got this guy 71, and it's like, I'm trying to get more people like that. And then be like, hey, you guys can work out together. Oh, you don't want to do the sparring portion? Not a big deal. Like when we start rolling, you guys go. So when we are able to run the new schedule we put together and the new model, it's going to allow us to basically we'll have a class, and then want to do like crazy intense rolls, which we never really do, but like more just like, all right, class is over, now we're rolling. Like the sparring portion of jiu-jitsu.
Sure.
So but that's been something like with Dana, it's like, he's just not going to benefit any from rolling with like one of my 25-year-old brown belts in jiu-jitsu. It's like, but he will benefit from coming to class, getting the wellness portion of it, moving around, sweating, and then afterwards getting over with some other people that's their niche too. It's like they can't do.
You got to meet people where they are.
Exactly.
In anything you do in life, whether it's fitness, whether it's, like wellness overall, mental, physical. So yeah, I completely agree with that. But so with the job that I'm at, man, I love it. But again, like you, like I'm asking myself, how long am I going to be here? Not in terms of I'm necessarily unhappy, but it just, I don't know, man. It's just kind of hard to, like as young as I am, I reach things at a much earlier age than I thought I was.
Oh, man, I know. And that's like
I'm like, I thought this was, I mean, the last director was in her 40s, and she'd worked, so I'm like, okay, this will happen when I'm in my 40s. Well, now I'm in my 30s and it's happening.
Now
I'm
what?
like, I've got a long ass time until I retire. Like 20 years. If I put in 20 years total there, I will not be eligible to retire. And 20 years is a long time to be at one job. So I do ask, and then also just financial, well-being. I mean, I try to be really smart with my money. I save, I put back, I invest. But I think to myself, like, especially in higher ed, maybe I need to, pursue a doctorate. Maybe I need to try to move up,
man,
to get that financial
constantly,
security. I don't know.
I'll tell you two things that are longer term goals of mine. And one, dude, I never, ever, and I don't even like saying it right now because it's like, I don't even believe that one gets into politics. But like hell, somebody like me is going to go through what my wife and I just went through as a business owner in my fucking community.
Yeah.
Like, I'm just telling people this. It's like, as soon as we get this move initiated, because we had a 90-day offer, contingent offer accepted on a space that meets 100% of our needs.
Sure.
And we got to sell our building. The bank's like, hey, re-interject all this capital into the other building once you sell yours. Ours, like, we're pretty confident it's going to sell. We've got a couple of people look at it. It's only been on the market a week, but it's like, it's like the light. Like, I can't even say and do things right now out of fear that people will show up and write me tickets from code enforcement, or out of fear that the city council people, even from my own ward, that have offered me their help and like, hey, we're going to get this, because hopefully we move and we don't have, but if we don't, we got to go back to like, oh, I'm going to build on my property. And you saying things to me like, that's fine, that's a law, Brian. Unless you pay us $5,000, like that's not going to exist. So that's a peripheral thing on a back burner for me. But it's like, I'm going to deal solely in unelected positions first. I feel like that's where all the corruption's at. It's like all of city planning, unelected.
Right.
Or we just got a new city planner, works for the real estate company. And it's like the sort of backdoor special interest are disgusting. Once you get presented with like the lay of the land, and it's just like, I'm just gonna shine light on it. Listen, but it's like, I keep making this point. It's like, how many of you leaders? Everybody likes to call them leaders. I'm like, representatives. They're a representative,
right?
How many of you representatives have a background in political science that aren't lawyers or judges? None. And I mean none, beyond having like maybe an American government class in high school,
right? And
then maybe a civics class or American government college civics in high school. And I don't understand that. And it's baffled me. I'm like, man, these are some weird problems to have. And also there's nothing, some of the problems we ran into, it was like, yeah, this is standard. Just go get your architectural designs, blah, blah. And then they're like, you move into phases, and then they start hitting you with this enforcement. And they're like, oh, that's going to be $100,000, man. Like extra. Forget your subcontracting. That doesn't matter. You're in phase 4 now. And phase 4 is where we tell you that you have to do this sidewalk and drainage and all this stuff. Unless you pay us $5,000. You got to pay $100 unless you pay $5. And it's like 5 is just enough too, where it's like, why it pissed me off so much, because it's like, I would pull that from liquidity in my business to pay that. And then it's like, well, what are you going to do with $5,000? Well, we're going to go put drainage in for somebody that needs it. And I'm like, so you mean tech? Because you had tax money appropriated for my street, and you did put some asphalt on top of the street, left part of it a dirt road, but you made a dead end street almost a tech. And it's weird, man. It's weird how that's what I've experienced. Like a whole story of what we experienced because we're trying to a 12-month period trying to build, and $20,000 invested, and me cutting all of those losses out by getting this offer accepted on this building is the only way we're willing to walk away. Like this, the losses we've cut, and like what the appraisal of the new building will be, and what capital we'll get if we sell our building at the rock bottom price that we have to sell it at to get out. But it's like, that's not going to happen again. because this.
Right.
You were like the 100th person I told this week. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like we put out some videos and they got 10,000 views.
Right.
And it's like, that's what got the city council contacting us. But it's like, we can't say, there's no being pro marijuana dispensary. There's no being pro casino. There's like everybody around town that I network with is afraid of getting like, of pissing off this wing or that wing or whatever. And I'm like, same bird stereotype right here.
Exactly. And that's one of the things I think I've come to realize more and more. You know, I mean, I would say I was like earlier when I was talking about the religious background and things, I was very conservative. You know, I was like W was the man. You know what I mean?
That's the thing, man. I'm still pretty conservative.
Well, I went the opposite end, man. I went super liberal. You know what I mean? And
I'm liberal in some ways.
And I explored that. And now I'm at the age where I'm kind of like, you know, that side is pretty dangerous, but that side can be too. The more extreme you get on each side, you know, the worse off you are as a society. And I've come to kind of this middle ground of like, we have to have some conservatism in areas.
For sure. I'm very economically conservative, for example.
Yeah, I think libertarians can kind of be assholes, but I'm pretty libertarian in a lot of ways. But you know, hey, let's fund public school and roads.
Can we take care of the infrastructure?
Exactly.
And like, man, that's my agreement or disagreements. And like when we were at our city meeting, I was just like, I wonder how many of these people are Republicans,
right?
You know, and it's like, and how do you justify identifying with that partisan group? And sit here and want to make me pay for sidewalks on land that I own so you can then, like, that's how it works. It's like, are those my sidewalks?
Right.
No, they belong to the city. You can't say anything about them. You can't, like, if we want to take them out, we will. You know, like my chiropractor, he when he built his, they like his place some years later, they came in and they gave him some problems on the front end building, but all the hotels in our county right now pay this voluntary tax. The reason we can't have Airbnbs is because the hotels will stop paying the tax. So the city has to keep Airbnbs.
Right. No competition.
Yes. And it's seen as that, but it's like, it's more so like the Airbnbs have highlighted, like, we don't have to pay that tax. It's voluntary. So the casinos will have to stop. So like they came to my chiropractor and were like, we want you to put in this fire hydrant. And he's like, oh, you know, great. Like, show me the statute where it says I'm responsible to do that. And they're like, well, you know, it's just more of a recommendation. And he'd had this, he told me this other story about his driveway where he like, it didn't end up paying anything and never came back to him. And it's like this years later. But like, so he went ahead and got the fire hydrant put in for whatever reason. It was like the church, the church I used to go to and the other church from across the street right next to him. And he's just like, has it put in, and like when they're done or whatever, he's like, where's my tool? And they're like, what do you mean?
It's mine.
He's like, this is mine, dude. Like, I got this sweet fire hydrant here.
Yeah.
Like, I want to turn this thing on right now.
We're about to have a block party.
Yeah. And they're like, sir, you can't do that. Okay. This is ours. The city's, of which you are not included, even though it's on your property, man.
You paid for it.
Yeah. And it, you know, like I never gave